I'm 96 years old and I am sitting in my own kitchen. 8 years ago, I walked into a nursing home in the town where I have lived for 60 years, and I asked 40 residents the same question. Only 3 of them gave me the answer I was hoping to hear. The other 37 gave me answers that I have thought about every single day for the last 8 years. Their answers are the reason I am still in my own home at 96. Their answers should be the reason you change something in your life this week. If you are honest with yourself, you are already on the road that those 37 women were on. You will end up where they ended up, unless you understand what they finally understood too late. In rooms they did not choose, in buildings they could not leave. I am going to tell you the question I asked. I am going to tell you what the 37 said, and I am going to tell you what the 3 said. I went to that nursing home in 2017. I was 88 years old. I had just buried my best friend, who had moved into that building 2 years before she died. I had visited her every Wednesday for those 2 years, and in that time, I had become familiar to the staff and to many of the other residents. After her funeral, I asked the director if I could come back one more time to talk to the residents who had been her friends. I sat with 40 women, one at a time, over 3 afternoons. I asked each one of them the same question. The question was this: when you look back at your life, what is the one thing you wish you had done differently in your 60s? Not your 70s, not your 80s, your 60s. I asked about the 60s specifically because I had begun to suspect by the time I was 88 that the 60s were the decade that decided everything. The 70s and 80s were when the consequences arrived. The 60s were when the choices were made. 37 of the 40 women gave me answers in the same 3 categories. I am going to tell you all 3, because if you are in your 60s right now, you are choosing one of them this week, and you do not know it. The first category given by 16 of the 40 women was this: I wish I had not retired so early. These were women who had stopped working in their early 60s, some by choice, some because their husbands had retired and they had retired with them, some because their companies had offered packages they could not refuse. All of them had thought at the time that retirement was the reward for a long life of work. Every one of them, sitting in that nursing home, told me almost the same sentence: I had nowhere to go in the morning anymore. One woman, named Catherine, told me she had retired at 62 and had not, in the 23 years since, found anything to replace the structure of her work. Her days had become long. Her phone had stopped ringing. Her friends from work had moved on. Her sense of being someone who was expected somewhere, by someone at a specific time, had evaporated within 2 years of retiring. She told me in the nursing home, I should have kept working part-time until I was 75. I would still be in my own house if I had. I am 96 years old. I worked part-time as a bookkeeper for a local funeral home until I was 79. I did not need the money. I needed the calendar. I needed the people who were expecting me on Tuesday mornings. The day I retired at 79, I replaced the bookkeeping with 3 volunteer commitments. I have never, in 34 years since I was 62, had a week without somewhere to go and someone to answer to. The first lesson: if you are about to retire fully in your 60s, do not cut your hours. change jobs, volunteer, keep something on the calendar that other people expect you to show up to. The second category, given by 14 of the 40 women, was this: I wish I had not let my children move so far away without saying anything. These were women whose children had taken jobs in other states, other countries, other lives. The mothers had said nothing because they did not want to be a burden. They had said, "Go, of course, follow your career." They had said, "I am fine. I have my friends here." They had not said, "I would like you to consider staying." Every one of them told me, in some version, I should have asked them to stay closer. One woman, named Dorothy, told me her 3 children all lived more than 800 miles away. She had never said in the years they were deciding their careers that she would have liked them to be reachable in an afternoon. By the time she needed them, all 3 had families, mortgages, and lives that could not be moved. They visited twice a year. She had ended up in a nursing home because there was no one within 800 miles to help her stay home. Dorothy said to me, "I traded my independence for their convenience. They did not ask me to. I did it to myself." I am 96 years old. I asked my own daughter when she was 27 to consider the implications of moving to California. I told her clearly that I would prefer if at least one of my 3 children lived within driving distance. My oldest son lives 14 miles from here. He has lived there for 40 years. He had other offers. He stayed because I asked. I have heard women tell me that this is selfish. It is not selfish. It is honest. The mothers in that nursing home had been not selfish for 40 years, and they were paying for that politeness with the last years of their lives. The second lesson: tell your children while they are still young that you want at least one of them within reach. Do not pretend this is a small request. It is the most important request of your life, and you have only one chance to make it before their lives are settled elsewhere. The third category, given by 7 of the 40 women, was this: I wish I had not stopped having a best friend. This is the one that surprised me the most. These were women who, in their 60s, had let their closest friendships fade. Not from anger, not from any specific event, from the slow accumulation of canceled lunches, missed phone calls, postponed visits. They had each had, in their 20s and 30s and 40s, a best friend. By their 60s, that best friend was someone they saw twice a year. By their 70s, they had stopped seeing her at all. One woman, named Geraldine, told me she had not seen her best friend from 1962 in 19 years, when that friend died. They had lived 40 minutes apart. They had simply allowed the distance to grow. Geraldine said to me, "If I had kept her, I would not be here. We had promised each other in 1965 that we would never let one of us go into a place like this. I let her go into one in 2009 because I had drifted away. I did not even know she was there until her daughter called me." A woman without a best friend over 60 is a woman whose family is the only line of defense against a nursing home. Family, however much they love you, does not fight as hard as a best friend who made a promise in 1965. I am 96 years old. My best friend from 1948 is dead. My best friend from 1962 is dead. My best friend now is a woman named Margaret. She is 71. I met her at the funeral home where I worked. We have lunch every Tuesday. She has promised me, in writing, that she will fight my children if they try to move me anywhere I do not want to go. The third lesson, keep your best friend. If your best friend has drifted, call her this week. If she is gone, find another one, even at 75, even at 80. The friend is the firewall between you and a room you did not choose. 37 women, 3 regrets, the early retirement, the distant children, the lost best friend. The 3 women who gave me different answers. They were the 3 who had figured it out, but too late, and they could not undo what they had done. They told me they had wished they had said yes to fewer obligations, asked for help sooner, and stopped trying to be easy for their families. Those are good answers, but they were not the dominant pattern. The dominant pattern was the 3 above. You are in your 60s, or you are about to be. You are choosing right now whether to retire fully, whether to let your children move without protest, whether to keep calling your best friend. These are not small choices. They are the only choices that matter. A nursing home does not begin with a fall. It begins with the 3 quiet decisions a woman makes in her 60s, when she still believes she has all the time in the world. I'll see you in the next one.